Hi, I'm Graham and welcome to Invervale's The Oh No Show. This is where John and I will be sharing our own personal oh no moments from over 35 years in the pest control industry. Despite social media's view of the world, things aren't always glitzy and glamorous and things don't always go to plan. And that's the point. We encounter challenges, we pick ourselves up and we learn from them. And even though some of these might well leave you feeling defeated, it's how you respond to them and how you grow. And remember, success is often failure turned inside out. So on to this episode. It's a seasonality one, and we're calling it The Summer We Thought We Were Rich. So John, why have you picked this topic for this episode?
Well, as I'm sitting out in the sunshine this week in 32 degrees, it reminds me of how I used to rub my hands and think that it was great. We did a lot of fly spraying at the time, a lot of insect work, and you knew that the sunshine was going to be very beneficial for the business. We're going to get some good revenue. But it wasn't long, and we're into the winter, and that's the problem with pest control. Great thing with pest control is it's always going to be needed, but the downside of that, the pest control industry, is the seasonality element. Where we can go from feast to famine if we're not careful, and we experienced that, like I'm sure every pest control company has. And the biggest issue is you make all that money, you work really hard, is keeping onto it.
Yeah. Have you got any kind of specific experiences or periods that stick in your mind?
I think the problem is, Graham, there was a lot of experiences, because I think as pest controllers, and I know we did as a company for a long time, you almost accept it. Well, pest control is seasonal, and in fact, the problem is you almost look forward to it. I think as a business, we would work really hard over the summer, and then we'd go, great, it's now the winter, we can relax, we can clean out the store, we can tidy the van, we can maybe go to a 4-day week or something or other. The problem is, obviously, the costs are all the same.
Exactly.
And the profit very quickly falls off a cliff, and it often wasn't, well, it was always, it wasn't a question of whether we were going to lose money over the winter, it was how much. And you would finish that summer season feeling optimistic and positive, maybe even given bonuses on the basis of it, and then you're watching that all eroded, and a good year can turn into an average one or even a poor one. Well, we want a good year to turn into a great one.
Yeah. So what sort of kind of impact on the business did you find this seasonality having then? What were sort of some of the specifics that you saw happening in your business? And also with yourself, obviously running a business is stressful. You've got the weight of its performance and the people that work for you as well. So how did that impact you personally?
Well, as we know, running a business is a roller coaster ride, and this seasonality element doesn't help. The experiences were, like I say, many. We found ourselves working hard and adapting the business to those good times, and this was often the problem. You would recruit. You would see that the business was busy, and you would recruit to deal with that. Your management team would be under pressure and would want more admin staff. The staff would want more stock, or the operations team would want more stock, and everybody would want to optimize that opportunity, but it would be very slow to change things as you came into the winter, and you knew the winter was coming, but like I say, you tended not to react to it quick enough. But also, one of the biggest issues with the business was often your we as a business we were, I like to think, quite well run. We had a business plan, we had management accounts, we had a finance director, we had all these things in place, but yet our experiences were probably the same as the man in the van, and are but much more complex. So we wouldn't get our management accounts until...
Scale kind of sometimes inoculates you from it, but sometimes it exacerbates it as well, doesn't it? And the more moving parts, the more complex it is to keep on top of stuff.
Yeah, and know what's going on. So everybody's shouting, and that's the thing. Everybody's shouting, and you can see the revenue, and you think that you always... in a business, you can normally see the revenue. You know what's being invoiced.
Yeah, of course.
It's the costs which take time to filter through the business.
Yeah, and it's only natural, isn't it, when the teams are under pressure, because the work goes through the roof sometimes, doesn't it? And when they're under pressure, they are going to be shouting very loudly for more, aren't they? And it's that balance, isn't it? Because you're right, you can't scale up instantly and then descale instantly. There has to be a way of balancing that need with some innovative solutions for dealing with it, rather than just responding to it. And I think that's one of the things, is not just to respond to people shouting loudly.
That is, and as I said, the issue is often that you're, as a director or manager, or you can be a manager of yourself. Your decisions, you need good decisions, and they've got to be based on good intelligence and good data, and you want to be able to predict the future, but you can't. And unfortunately, often people, as I said, we had management accounts. We had a finance director who gave us management accounts, but they would take their time. They would be midway through I think initially we were wanting them on the 14th, and then in the end we had them by the 5th.
Yeah.
But even then, if you're getting them by the 5th, they're still old data. It's still historic. Yeah. But if you're getting them midway through the month, you haven't got time to react. So one bad month can become 2 bad months. And if you don't really know what's going on, you don't know how you're performing.
Yeah. So sort of what do you think that you've taken from that experience? And say that was 20 plus years of similar experience, year on year, wasn't it? So what are the main lessons and things you've taken from going through that year in, year out?
So I think the main thing is not to accept circumstances, not to accept those things that are giving you pain, that are giving you challenges, and I think generally people don't accept those things which hurt because they don't want to repeat them.
No.
But with the seasonal thing, I think it's accepted a lot, because I think if you spoke to, it'll be interesting to hear what people think. But I think generally people accept in the pest control industry that there's going to be a quieter winter, and maybe they're going to lose money, because if you can't flex and your revenue is going to drop. And I think there's very few pest control companies which will not experience a downturn in revenue. Again, I would love to hear from people who have been able to flatten out that curve and turn over the same amount of sales in maybe June as they do in December or January. I'm not sure that business exists, but we'll see, because we tried everything over 30 years. But you can't change the revenue situation, but you don't have to accept losing money over the winter. And I think that's what we did at NBC. There came a point where we had to change and not accept those things.
Okay. So what kind of strategies did you kind of put into place to deal with that? As you say, it's a known thing that happens every year, so nobody can be surprised when September things start to drop off. So what kind of strategies did you formulate from what you'd learned?
I think the before I move on to what we did, I think the thing is, is to say why we did it, because you see, we did end up with an oh no moment. So we may have lost money for many winters over the winter, but we generally made money. NBC made money every year in 30 years bar 1 year. And it was that 1 year which meant we had to, we couldn't accept losing money over the winter, because we didn't have any money to lose. And if we had experienced a winter like we had done perhaps the 10 years previously, we would have been out of business. And so it was that which prompted us to challenge and disrupt and implement strategies very quickly that would not only ensure that we retained profit but made profit, and we worked. Everybody got together, and we implemented. We looked at those things that were the barriers to making, which was affecting us.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously scaling up and down to meet a seasonal demand is a big challenge for lots of different businesses in lots of different sectors, isn't it? So what sort of things were put in place that kind of had that in mind, about that need for that instant scale and that instant scale down? What kind of things were looked at? I mean, there was working patterns for some of the guys, wasn't there? I remember that, where some of the jobs that were done, especially out there in falconry and landfills, they're not needed much during the winter, are they? But they're needed a lot in the summer. And I remember we put some of these guys on annualised contracts, didn't we?
That worked really well, and it was part of many things that we did. See, the thing was that, your revenue is going to drop. We understood the revenue was going to drop, so we had to enable our costs to flex with that. And you've got two types of costs. You've got cost of sales and you've got operational overhead, and both had to be managed. And as you point out, a really good way of managing the flex in the operational teams was controlling the staff hours and the annualized hours was a great strategy. And I remember when we implemented that, or we talked about it, you wondered how it was going to be received.
Yeah, there was an element of scepticism, wasn't there, about how people would take it?
Well, people always like to tell you how things aren't going to work, don't they? But sometimes, this was a time where we had to do things. So we would disrupt and try these things, but it was well received, because I can remember people accruing so many hours over the summer, because we did a lot of dawn to dusk work and things like that, accruing so many hours over the summer that they took December off, and they couldn't have been happier. No,
I mean, if you're working as an outside job most of the time, when you're going to want to be working in the middle of summer, aren't you? You're not going to want to be out there in the depths of winter flying a bird. And so that opportunity to be more flexible for them was better received than just doing shift work or offering overtime, wasn't it? Is they valued it, and we got value back from that as a business, because we got that kind of investment back from the people, because they could see that we were doing something that worked for them as well.
The other thing I remember we introduced was the supply partners.
Oh yes.
So we always like to brand things and package them according to the brand that we were trying to build, and we were trying to be a premium product, and we wanted to make sure that the problem with subcontractors, supply partner is a nice word for the subcontractors. But we wanted to, rather than just have those people those subcontractors who we could call upon, because often there was no loyalty with the subcontractor. They might try and take our work. They might not turn up. They might do things in a way that would bring the brand into disrepute. So we wanted I remember we approached some key subcontractors and talked to them about giving them a significant amount of work in return for certain loyalties, and we got them to sign an agreement.
And it was almost like I think a lot of the things I learnt from that period was what we'd gone through with our own clients to become supply partners to them.
Well, it was that, and the key accounts loved it.
Yes, exactly, and it was a very novel approach, and it did yield results, didn't it? At the end
I
of the
remember
day?
using it in tenders because on tenders they would always ask you if you had subcontractors,
They did, yeah.
and it was a bit of a one. You never knew how to answer it because on the one hand, if you answered it no, they would want to. That was in one way, that was what they wanted to hear because they knew you had control of your operational resource, but they were concerned that how you would be able to cope with any
trap one.
So then
either which way there's downsides.
And then if you said yes, they wanted to know the onboarding process, the management process, and all the rest of it. So the supply partner arrangement we had, meant we could answer yes in these questionnaires, and show a detailed assessment, management, and control and support of the supply network.
There was an application process to be gone through, and I think that was viewed more favourably in tenders, wasn't it? Because it showed that we had control over the quality of our service, and everybody knows that most pest control companies will use subcontracting at times.
Oh yeah, and so from an operational point of view, we now have better control of our costs and the flexibility to flex up. So we weren't overemployed, and we developed ways of understanding that. So we weren't overemployed, but we could flex up over the peak periods, and then flex back to our base level key resource. And then the same was true with the overheads, but the overheads were almost more important because the overheads were very much more difficult to flex up or down, and so that's probably was felt sometimes more painfully because the office staff, the management staff, the admin staff, you can't go and subcontract that.
No, you can't. Were there any other kind of things? Scaling and keeping a control of your costs is obviously one of the big things. But were there other kind of pain points with such a seasonal business? And that did you have any personal kind of incidents or that you think are relatable to people?
Well, I mean, for most of the time, like I said, we had the downturn experience, and it was frustrating. But we'd built the revenue and built the profit. That we could, and that was previously had been the strategy: build the profit to get you through the winter. And I'm sure there are many people who deal with it that way. But I would ask you to challenge that, and because that's profit you've earned and profit you worked hard at. So, like I say, there was a certain element of apathy. It wasn't until we had no choice but to. We couldn't lose money. So if you're talking about personal experience, well, if you're going through a time where you're struggling to pay the wages, the bank aren't going to lend you any more money, and you can't lose any money. My personal experience was more exciting than I'd like it.
Yes, I can imagine. And necessity is often the mother of invention, isn't it? So what things were explored and put in place to deal with that need to make sure that the seasonal curve was flattened more, and going into winter, it wasn't going to be that dip you'd normally expect?
I remember us looking at ways, the obvious, so we've talked about how we manage the costs. We did the obvious thing, and it's the first thing anyone will look at, is trying to maintain the revenue. And it's interesting looking at other similar sectors and what they've done. So if you look at gardening businesses, you're not going to get much more seasonal than a grass cutting business. A lot of them diversified into gritting, which is also extremely seasonal.
Both of them. So they almost went kind of hybrid and had that dual mode.
Yeah.
So summer cutting grass and winter gritting roads. And
yeah, well, sounded great. And we weren't about to start, but there were a lot of those companies about. We did explore it. We did look at whether, because we had some customers we thought we might be able to offer that to. But it was so many people had already thought of it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think if there's anything else we thought of that would flatten the seasonal curve. I think we realised that was going to be difficult. We knew contract revenue, so rats and mice and contracts, we could build that. That would keep a core base of revenue. But we realised that you're not going to. All these things will improve and enhance, but we were never going to be able to flatten the curve. So we needed to manage costs, and we needed to find that crystal ball.
Yes.
Because we needed to know that what we were doing was going to result in profit. We couldn't let it result in loss. And so we improved our operation, our financial management.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So if you remember, we looked at how we managed those costs based on and overheads based on our trough, not our peak.
Yeah.
Introduced flex, and then we could map that financially, and as we looked for KPIs that would give us an indication of performance rather than waiting for the accounts.
Yeah, and that was on a very regular kind of, almost not quite live, but weekly basis of getting a view of what people's general contribution to the businesses and the techs, and having a bottom line on that. So a KPI needs to be measured. You need to have a flag on it, and putting that flag at what you need to break even at the very least. So even in the depths of winter, you know whether you're going to be making money or not on a regular basis.
Well, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Like I say, most businesses seem to operate, and as we did, and it didn't it transformed the business when we found our crystal ball, and we could look forward, because most businesses are reactive. So you're waiting for your management accounts. You might map the business financially. You might and know, all right, I need to turn over this revenue. I need to keep my costs here. But you need quite a large business to manage that well, because you need bookkeepers and accountants.
Good systems.
And good systems.
Yeah, you need to be able to measure everything.
And even then, at the end of all of that, we thought we did that all quite well. At the end of that, you're still working in the past. So you're reactive. So you get your management accounts and you go, oh crap. And then you try and figure it out. And by that time, another month's gone through and you've gone, oh crap again. And so the small businesses aren't even going to have that. No. And so they're going to be probably understanding their own performance by what they have in the bank, and which is even less of an idea. So the understanding a KPI that you will achieve, or a flag or a target that you will achieve, if you achieve that, you will be good. And it might be, the difficulty with revenue is costs can vary, and you don't know where it is. So some people will be saying, well, I know if I turn over $5,000 a month, my costs are generally about this, I should be okay. Well, one job will be more profitable than the other. One month you'll have more of X type of work than the other. And it really gets complicated as the business gets bigger and you start to employ people. So we found a better way of measuring it was a revenue per person, because you could understand, once you understood the revenue per person, you know roughly what the costs were per person.
Yeah.
And if you had your overheads under control, which is what we did as part of this exercise, you just needed to make sure everybody achieved that particular revenue. And as long as you've got that number right,
that's the key, isn't it? Is understanding your numbers well enough, and most small businesses struggle with that.
Do you know what? This all sounds very boring, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what? How many people like us will turn around to these small business owners and say, you need to do a business plan, you need to map your business financially, and it does sound very boring and very complicated, but unfortunately it's very necessary.
But it's not as complicated as it seems once you get in. It needs to be, you need to be able to break things down, you need to be able to understand things, and that doesn't mean complexity all the time. And just being able to start off on a journey doing that, you soon understand your business more, and that makes it easier to take the next step then, doesn't it?
It's a lot less stressful as well.
Yeah.
And it is, you're right, it's not complicated. Business is quite basic. It's, you need to bring in more than you spend.
Yes.
And as long as you can control those costs and have pricing discipline, you will largely achieve the same numbers, and you can manage that. And but we started talking about seasonality, and the way that links into the seasonality is that I think the most important thing is having that flexibility. You need to understand. You need to your core business, your overheads, and your main costs of sales need to be based on the trough, not the peak. And it might not sound very optimistic, but it is. If you've got the flexibility, you can be optimistic. I mean, we had massive growth, and to put it into context, we went from losing about 1.5 million to making 1.5 million in 2 years. So
it's a 3 million swing, isn't it? So that is a heck of a turnaround, isn't it? But there was no silver bullet there, was there? And all these things don't get rid of the pain, do they? They just kind of make it a little bit less painful.
I think they do get rid of the pain, because making money is not painful. So if you're making money, it's not painful. And we're looking at, and we shouldn't be looking. So that's something else we did. We're not looking at how much money we're making each month. We're looking at the profit. So, and a percentage of turnover. So we were always trying to maintain about a 20% net margin, about a 45% gross, and if so, that was our level of performance. So the revenue might drop, but as long as we're making 20% of that revenue, we're performing.
Excellent. Any other areas you wanted to talk about on seasonality? I mean, it's unavoidable, isn't it? At the end of the day, this is the industry, you've got different pests in the winter, you've got different needs in the summer. So are there any other kind of experiences? I mean, flex and scaling and control of costs are your main takeaways, aren't they?
That's absolutely it. And challenge and disrupt. Don't accept.
Yes.
Don't accept the seasonality. And I'm sitting here and saying this, but I, for decades, accepted it. and had that pain. Do you know what's funny though is I think my children probably experience the seasonal, they call it SAD syndrome, don't they?
They
when
do
you don't get the
indeed, yeah.
Well, I did used to get SAD.
I remember you had one of those little daylight lamps in your office, didn't you?
And particularly got sad when it snowed.
Yeah.
Because when it snowed, the guys couldn't go out.
I know.
And I used to look at how much money we were losing.
Costing per day to have.
But I took the magic out of winter for my children,
Yeah, I bet you did.
unfortunately, because every time it snowed, they went, poor daddy.
Yeah. Oh, well, mine just go, yay, tobogganing. Oh, gosh. Okay, and I think that's it in summary, is that things will go wrong. Well, they'll go down a path not expected. And moving your business forward and growing means you are going to end up breaking things at the end of the day. And that's part of growth, isn't it? And if you're not putting yourself in uncomfortable positions, if things aren't going wrong, you're probably playing it too safe and you're not going to get the growth.
And I think that's very much a key point there, Graham, that you put across very well. If things seem easy, you're probably not you're probably not achieving your optimum.
No, definitely.
But achieving more doesn't need to be as painful, but you do want to challenge, you do want to push the business forward, and it's not greed. Profit introduces security,
for everybody.
And
yourself, your staff, everybody benefits really down there. And I think that's the thing, is you don't need to be taking massive risks, but taking no risks is probably not the thing to do going forward for business, is it? You've got to change and not just go, well, we've always been like this, and let's continue doing the same things.
Yeah, well, what was it that Einstein said?
Einstein said, yeah, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing time and time again and expecting different results. So that's it. Well, hopefully that's been of interest to everybody, and I hope you'll join us for our next episode. Thanks very much.
Thank you.